Hi, this is Diane with Sacred Light Integrations, and I wanted this first video on the playlist for essential oils to be about one of my first experiences with essential oils. For those of you that don't know me, I have had my fun with health problems over the years, which equated to 18 surgeries and a stint on life support. After all of that and feeling I was getting back to a good place, I was still having many issues. I was seeing a chiropractor for my alignment, and I had a fake hip and I broke in my back. So a lot of that was helping my structure. And I found that the chiropractic was actually helping a little bit with my immunity, which who can't use a little bit of that sometimes. But with all of that, my health was I was still struggling. The chiropractor mentioned a friend of hers that was into some alternative healing modalities. And at this point, I was ready to try anything, traditional or non. So I made an appointment to see her. And as I was headed there, I had an emotional breakdown. I got lost and I was like screaming in the car and just completely overreacting to the situation. And I knew at the time, even I was just like, this is crazy. What are you doing? But that was the state of mind I was in with all my health problems. I spent many of my days hiding my disease from everyone, and spent many of my days just trying to put one foot in front of the other to get through each day. So it was a very struggling time for me. But I found her, and she welcomed me very, very welcomely into her home. And she began sharing with me some of the alternative healing modalities that she worked with and had much information on. A lot of the Chinese healing modalities. She mentioned about how they would read parts of the outside of the body to diagnose what was going on inside of the body. She was showing me charts on how they read eyes and the tongue, on how the coating on the tongue could diagnose certain problems. She started sharing with me information about the chakras. I mean, I knew about the chakras, but she was sharing more information on the meaning behind them, where the imbalances were, and so forth, like that. She had asked me to bring along some of my supplements and medications that I was using. And it was at that point she had me hold some of them, and she introduced me to muscle testing, which again, I was just fascinated on. So much of what she was sharing was all new to me. But back to the essential oils. She set me in an anti-gravity chair and covered me with a blanket, and she put some electrodes on my fingers, and her computer was diagnosing me on what oils would most benefit me. So when it completed, she turned to me and she said, well, there's of course a few things that, that she could introduce to me, like supplements and so forth. But the first thing she said was there was an oil that she thought would really benefit me after, especially about what had just happened. And she said it was Trauma Life. Trauma Life is a Young Living trademark blend to help us work through some trauma that we have been through in our lives. Well, of all the 18 surgeries, the broken back, the broken hip, being on life support, I never thought of it as trauma. So her saying that alone, as identifying it as trauma, was a huge eye-opener for me. She went on to say that there was 3 oils, but I want to focus on Trauma Life today because that was one that I feel was most beneficial for me at the time. She said I could buy the oils from her, or I could get them from a friend, or I could go online and buy them however I wanted to do it. She was very, open to however I wanted to do it. But we spent like 3 hours together for a 1-hour appointment. So I was obviously very grateful for all of the information that she shared. So I left with a whole notebook of information for me to dive into and look into, because many of these I had never heard of in all my years in the medical, should we call it the medical circus some days, I guess is how I felt at the time. So I got the oil and I started to apply the 3 of them that she said on the bottom of my feet, morning and night, simple as that. At first, I didn't notice anything drastic, and I wasn't expecting anything drastic because she was telling me how they work at the subtle body, and it's usually not a drastic change. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. But 6 or 7 weeks later, I was at work and someone had not done their job, and so it kind of fell to me to work late and make sure the project got completed. And I just, I did it, and I was on my way home then quite late that night. And as I'm driving, it kind of hit me that I didn't react like I had in the car, and I would have normally at least had some words to say to that person about not doing their job and how it affected me, but I hadn't reacted. I just responded and I went with the flow of it. And I knew immediately it was that trauma life that had started to work through my emotions, allowed me to start to see the light and see that I could simply respond and not everything had to be a reaction, which is, I feel, a lot of what, when I was in the medical world, everything was kind of a reaction because many of my situations were kind of urgent with some of the things that had happened. So that was a very profound experience for me, and noticed going forward that they continue to improve as well. I mean, that conscious thing, and of course we have our habits though. But I noticed repeatedly that I was able to kind of have that pause before I reacted. Um, so I think Trauma Life was really exactly what I needed to get started with my journey on essential oils. After that, I decided to get more invested. So I wanted to pick a company, because at that point there were a couple companies out there that were pretty major. And as I started doing some research, and for those of you that know me and those of you that don't, I have 5 degrees in a CPA, so I know how to do my research. But I went on and I started researching the companies, the history behind the companies, who was the primary people behind the companies, the soil that the products and the plants were grown in to be distilled and so forth. And that is when I picked Young Living. Gary Young was very instrumental in doing research on the chemical constituents of essential oils. And I'll talk more about that in future videos. But he was the one that really did a lot of the research and did the blending and found how certain oils blend together. And as I mentioned, Trauma Life is a Young Living trademark blend. So it's a blend of oils. But from then I went on and discovered many more benefits, which we'll get into in future videos. But for today, that's my story on how one of my really first eye-opening stories with essential oils happened. And I look forward to seeing you in future videos, and hopefully this story may help you a little bit as well on your journey. Until next time, namaste.